What if I told you Aemond Targaryen wasn't born a monster? He wasn't even the cruelest child in his own family. For most of his childhood, Aemond was the one everyone laughed at. The prince without a dragon, constantly bullied by his own nephews, desperately wanting nothing more than to prove he belonged. That is what makes his story so tragic. Almost every terrible thing Aemond ever did can be traced back to one single night. The night he lost an eye and gained the largest dragon in the world. That moment completely changed the way he viewed the world. From then on, kindness became weakness, fear became respect, and power became the only thing that mattered. By the end of his life, Aemond would burn entire towns, kill members of his own family, plunge the Seven Kingdoms deeper into civil war, and become one of the most feared men in Westerosi history. How does a lonely little boy become the terror of Westeros? Aemond was born into the most powerful family in the world, but unlike his older brother Aegon, his sister Helaena, or his nephews Jacaerys and Lucerys, Aemond had no dragon. In House Targaryen culture, a dragon isn't just a pet. It's proof that you're truly Targaryen. Every time he watched his siblings fly overhead, he was reminded of what he didn't have. Eventually, the teasing began. Jace, Luke, and even Aegon mocked his insecurity. The cruelest moment came when they presented Aemond with a pig fitted with fake wings, the pink dread. Everyone laughed except Aemond. Every insult taught him one lesson: nobody respects weakness. If there's one person who understood Aemond's pain, it was his mother, Alicent Hightower. Alicent saw every slight against her children as a reminder that they stood on dangerous ground, constantly warning them that if Rhaenyra became queen, her sons might not survive. Aemond didn't grow up believing his nephews were simply cousins. He grew up believing they might one day become his executioners. Children raised in fear often become adults who mistake aggression for survival. His mother didn't teach him to love power. She taught him to fear being powerless. Then came the funeral of Laena Velaryon. While everyone else was asleep, Aemond walked alone toward the oldest, largest, and most terrifying dragon alive, Vhagar. Vhagar had fought beside Visenya during Aegon's conquest, outliving generations of riders. Many grown men wouldn't dare approach her, but Aemond simply refused to let fear stop him. When Vhagar finally accepted him, everything changed. In a single night, the weakest child in the family became the most dangerous. People could no longer ignore him. They had to respect or fear him. Once you've been powerless, you never want to feel that way again, and Aemond would spend the rest of his life making sure no one could ever laugh at him again. But claiming Vhagar came with a price. As Aemond made his way back from his first flight, he was confronted by Laena Velaryon's daughters, Baela and Rhaena. To them, Vhagar belonged to their recently deceased mother. When Rhaena accused him of theft, Aemond answered with cold confidence, "Your mother is dead. Vhagar has a new rider." The argument quickly became a fight. Baela struck him first, Rhaena joined in, and moments later, Jacaerys and Lucerys arrived. Now it was 4 against 1, but Aemond stood his ground. He punched, kicked, and fought all 4 of them, eventually picking up a rock. In the television series, the fight spirals out of control. Jace pulls a knife, Aemond gains the upper hand, and Luke slashes across Aemond's face, taking his left eye forever. Imagine waking up as an insecure boy desperate for a dragon and going to bed missing an eye. Yet, as blood poured down his face, Aemond refused to act like a victim, telling his mother, "I may have lost an eye, but I gained a dragon." To him, the cost had been worth it, but he never forgave the people who caused it, especially Lucerys. As Aemond grew older, he placed a sapphire inside his empty eye socket. Most people hide their scars. Aemond turned his into a weapon. The sapphire was a warning that told the world he would never be weak again. While Aegon drank and avoided responsibility, Aemond trained every single day in swordsmanship, history, Valyrian, and military strategy. By adulthood, Aemond had become one of the deadliest swordsmen in the Seven Kingdoms. Many argued Aemond would have made a better king than Aegon, but being a good commander isn't the same as being a good ruler. Aemond had one fatal flaw: his pride. Inside Aemond's mind, that childhood fight had never truly ended. He was still that little boy everyone laughed at, only now he had the largest dragon in the world to settle the score. For years, Aemond waited. Then, King Viserys died, shattering the fragile peace. Aegon II was crowned king by the Greens. Rhaenyra declared herself queen on Dragonstone, and the dance of the dragons began. Both sides raced across Westeros to win the support of the great houses. Lucerys was sent to Storm's End, hoping to secure the loyalty of House Baratheon. But when Luke arrived, Aemond Targaryen was already standing inside the Great Hall. Inside Storm's End, Lord Boros Baratheon made it clear that no blood would be spilled beneath his roof. Luke delivered his message and turned to leave, but Aemond stopped him with a single demand: an eye. Aemond told Lucerys to remove one of his own eyes, a scar for a scar. Luke refused. Lord Boros stepped in before things escalated, and Aemond reluctantly let Luke leave. Outside, a violent storm raged across Shipbreaker Bay. Luke climbed onto Arax and took off, but behind him, Vhagar rose into the air. Aemond pursued him through the storm, taunting Luke and swooping past him again and again. While many assume Aemond intended to kill Luke from the beginning, the television series suggests something far more tragic. As lightning flashed, Arax became terrified. Against Luke's commands, the young dragon turned and unleashed fire directly into Vhagar's face. Dragons are not horses. They have wills of their own. Vhagar didn't care about Aemond's revenge. She cared that another dragon had attacked her. Ignoring Aemond's desperate commands to stop, Vhagar lunged forward and tore through Arax. Luke and his dragon disappeared in an explosion of blood and fire. Aemond's confidence vanished, replaced by pure shock. He hadn't wanted this. He wanted Luke to be afraid, but instead, his nephew was dead, and Aemond had just committed kinslaying. To kill a member of your own family is considered a cursed sin in Westeros. Luke's death guaranteed the Dance of the Dragons would become an all-out war. When news reached Dragonstone, Daemon's response was chillingly simple: a son for a son. That decision led directly to one of the most horrifying acts in Targaryen history: blood and cheese. Daemon's agents infiltrated the Red Keep and forced Queen Helaena to choose which of her sons would die. Prince Jaehaerys was beheaded in front of his mother. Although Aemond didn't swing the sword, his actions at Storm's End set the entire chain of events in motion. When Aemond returned to King's Landing, he was greeted as the man who turned a political crisis into a war. Not long after, King Aegon II suffered devastating injuries during the battle at Rook's Rest. With the king bedridden, leadership fell to Aemond. For the first time, he held real political and military power. This should have been the moment Aemond proved his capability, but instead, it exposed his pride. Aemond believed victory could be achieved through overwhelming force. Where others saw diplomacy, he saw hesitation. The lonely boy who once longed to be respected had become a prince who demanded absolute obedience. Determined to draw Daemon into a final confrontation, Aemond took Vhagar into the Riverlands, reducing villages and fields to ash. Aemond wanted the Blacks to fear him, but these brutal tactics hardened enemy resistance instead of breaking it. Throughout the war, Aemond had one obsession above all others: Daemon Targaryen. In many ways, Daemon was everything Aemond admired: a fearless warrior and legendary dragon rider. Some fans describe Aemond as a darker reflection of Daemon. Both were second sons, exceptional fighters, and rode terrifying dragons. But Daemon knew when to be unpredictable, while Aemond believed raw strength alone could solve every problem. That difference would ultimately cost him everything. During his campaign in the Riverlands, Aemond spent time at Harrenhal, where he became involved with a mysterious woman named Alice Rivers. Some claimed she could see visions, others believed she manipulated Aemond, but she became one of the few people who could influence him. Aemond's certainty only grew stronger. He believed he couldn't be defeated because he rode the greatest dragon alive. By the final year of the dance, the war had consumed almost everything. All that remained was revenge, and for Aemond, the only man left who mattered was Daemon. Daemon arrived at Harrenhal alone with his dragon Caraxes, waiting as a direct challenge. When Aemond heard the news, he didn't hesitate. His advisors urged caution, warning it might be a trap, But Aemond mounted Vhagar and flew toward Harrenhal. As Aemond approached, Caraxes burst into the sky. The two dragons climbed higher and higher above the God's Eye Lake. Vhagar was enormous and ancient. Caraxes was smaller but faster and more agile. The dragons collided in midair, fire erupting across the sky as their claws tore into each other. Then came the moment that defined the battle. As the dragons locked together, Daemon unfastened the chains securing him to his saddle, stood on his dragon's back, and jumped through the open air. Sword in hand, he launched himself onto Vhagar. Before Aemond could react, Daemon drove the Valyrian's steel sword Dark Sister straight through Aemond's remaining eye, piercing the sapphire and continuing into his skull. Aemond Targaryen died instantly in his early 20s. The boy who spent his entire life protecting his one remaining eye, turning that empty socket into a symbol of strength, was killed through that very same place. The wound that defined Aemond's life also defined his death. Without their riders in control, both dragons crashed toward the God's Eye. Vhagar and Caraxes plunged into the lake below, the impact shaking the water for miles. Caraxes managed to drag himself onto the shore before dying, while Vhagar disappeared beneath the surface. Daemon's body was never found, remaining one of the greatest mysteries in Westerosi history. Was Aemond truly evil? He burned towns, terrorized civilians, and pursued revenge long after justice had become impossible. Those were his choices. But Aemond wasn't born this way. He was shaped by years of humiliation, a father who rarely noticed him, a mother who raised him in constant fear, and the discovery that strength earned him the respect kindness never did. Each event pushed him further down a dark path, until the lonely boy who only wanted a dragon became a man who believed fear was the only language the world understood. He is terrifying because you can understand exactly how he became the person he did. In the end, Aemond Targaryen achieved everything he thought he wanted. He claimed the greatest dragon alive, became a legendary warrior, commanded armies, and ruled as Prince Regent. But none of it brought him peace. The respect he chased came through fear instead of love, and the power he believed would protect his family ultimately helped destroy it. He spent his entire life trying to prove he was no longer the frightened little boy everyone laughed at, yet every decision he made was still driven by that same wounded child. Aemond didn't lose because he was weaker than Daemon. He lost because he never escaped the ghost of the boy who stood alone in King's Landing, watching everyone else soar through the sky. The prince who finally learned to fly could never escape the weight of his past.